advertised in Boston, New York, and Buffalo. 500 brave Americans wailing for to go, singing, blow your winds in the morning and blow your winds, hi-ho. Haul away your running gear and blow, boys, blow. They'll send you to New Bedford, a famous whaling port, and give you to some land sharks to board and fit you out, singing, blow your winds in the morning and blow your winds, hi-ho. Haul away your running gear and blow, boys, blow.
Good evening. Welcome to Dateline Boston. My name is Jim Britt, and this is another in our series titled Whaling Days, the great whaling days out of New Bedford at the beginning of the century. Tonight, we're going to go aboard ship again, and here is James S. Healy, librarian of the Free Public Library in New Bedford. Jim?
Good evening again. Tonight we're going to give you the second part of the film we started last week, the film which again is being shown for the very first time on television. And again, without further ado, here's Mr. Hegarty, our master of ceremonies.
Thank you. This film is a continuation of the Viola film, and while a ship the size of Viola would rather take small whales, they never passed up a big one. And as they sighted these whales, they were larger than the last ones that had been shown, and they had larger spout, and the men at masthead would stretch the hour blows out to 4 or 5 seconds, and the captain knew that they had a large whale in sight, and he goes through the same process. He orders the boats to get ready, and he goes to masthead so that he can signal out where the whales are, and every whale ship had a different set of signals. That is so if they were gamming another ship or another ship was in sight, they wouldn't be able to tell which direction the whale was. There was stiff competition out there. When they sighted the whales, they would lower the boat, and the boats would go onto the whales the same as they did small ones. These are larger whales there. They're a little more difficult for them to take. As they sailed up to the whale, the boat steerer or harpooner would dart the harpoons into the whale, both of them. Then they would take the mast and sail down, put them under the afterthought, and meanwhile the mate and the boat steerer were changing ends. This is all being done when the boat's traveling along about 30 or 35 miles an hour. Once they get the end shifted, they start hauling up onto the whale. He runs into the wind always. And they haul up onto the whale so that the mate can lance him. And he keeps doing this. He hauls up, lances the whale, and meanwhile they have this Nantucket sleigh ride. And it's only a modern New Bedford whale boat that could stand the punishment. That whale will be going along. When he's really mad, he'll approach 25, 30 knots. And they have to keep putting water on that line. If they don't, it will catch on fire. They dump water into the tubs and onto the loggerhead. And meanwhile, that boat is bouncing along from wave to wave, and that shows how the line was coiled in so that it will come out of the tubs without kinking. That's the man putting the water on the loggerhead, and the whale is taken off. They haven't been able to haul up onto him, and this is what's called the Nantucket sleigh ride. That's the whale starting off. These boats are nothing but half-inch cedar plank, but they're the only ones that can stand this punishment. Sometimes they have good luck, they will kill a whale in 20 minutes. And sometimes it'll take them 20 hours. But it's like having a bear by the tail. You either let go and get out of the way or kill it. These whales are down, these pictures are taken of whales down on the western grounds. That's about halfway between the United States and the Azore Islands. That line will run out. The whole 1,800 feet of it will run out. Sometimes they will have to hitch on another boat's line. They have seen whales that have taken as much as a mile of line out. They don't take it straight down, but down and underwater and drag it. Though a sperm whale can go down about a mile. These men have got to continue to haul up on the whale, and when they get near him, they will take and the mate will lance him. And the mate isn't considered a good man unless when he comes back aboard ship, that boat has black skin on it. And that's the way the whale will continue to run. It may be, as I say, 20 minutes or 20 hours. These are the best pictures of whales that's ever been taken. That gives you a view of a sperm whale. They haul up onto him and the mate lances him. Sometimes the whale will turn on him, and in this case they turned on him and tipped the boat over. While they're in the water, they have to watch out for the sharks. One thing about a whale boat, it will never sink. Another boat gets fast to the whale, and the mate goes up and lances the whale. They take and put a buoy, or we call it a drug, on the whale, and if they're quite a ways away from the ship, they might put a waif in it, which is nothing but a flag on a pole. And that's so that they can see the whale, because they float just awash. But after you kill the whale, you're not through. You've got to start and tow this monster back to the ship. And this whale here happens to be one about 90 foot long, weighs 100 or 110 tons. And when they're pulling on the oars there, it's just as though you're pulling a boat that's anchored. And it takes hours to haul that whale back. And when they get within a quarter of a mile of the ship, the boat pays out the line, and they throw the end aboard ship, and the whole crew takes a hold, pulling the whale towards the ship, using the motion of the ship to assist them. Those oars that you see, the ones on the right-hand side, looking at that boat, they're 16 foot long, and the other two, one of them's 14 and the 18. And this gives you an idea of the size of the whale and how much strength it needs to pull him. Those oars bend like willows when they pull on him. And that whale is about 3 times the length of the boat. Those boats are only 30 foot long, and they're made of half-inch cedar planks. They're very flexible, and a whale boat always leaks. If it didn't have some give to it, it would shatter. And a whale, if they kill a whale to the windward of the ship, they always haul him by the flukes, because the whale heads into the wind. If he's to the leeward of the ship, they haul him by the head. And sperm whales actually will move to the windward when they're dead. The motion of the waves on their flukes will make them go ahead very slow, but nevertheless they'll go straight to the windward. And the sperm whale is just awash. And that hump there, little hump, that's his side, that's where his eye is. The sperm whale's eye is only about the size of a cow's eye. When they get the whale alongside, they put a chain around his flukes and haul him forward so that hold him side of the whale, side of the ship, and then they can start cutting him in. A whale's eye you can see, but his ear is just hardly more than a pinhole. It isn't as big as a pencil, but they can hear very good. They put the fluke chain around, that's the small part of his body, and then they haul it forward so that they can start working on the fin. And a vessel, some of the whalers that were very short, they had difficulty working on a large whale. And vessels such as the Viola didn't like to take large whales, but they would never pass them up because you never knew when you would see another one. They get the boats hoisted up. They would, the whole crew would start working on the whale. And that gives you a view of the equipment in a boat. There's 81 pieces in there, and 6 men go in there. The weight of the men and the equipment is about a ton. The boat itself only weighs about 750 pounds. Cutting in the large whale is similar to cutting in the smaller whales, but there's different treatment of the head. Once in a while, the man or the captain or some of the officers might want some teeth to do scrimshaw or some bone to make canes, and they would take the jaw of the sperm whale in. It's quite a stunt unjointing this jaw. This one is about 18 foot long, and they officers stand there with these long spades and unjoint it, and then they just tear it out of the whale, bring it aboard, and in this case here they take it over the port side and lay it down on the deck. When they get it on the deck, they will cut those pans off. They take up a lot of room. They spread about 6 foot wide, and they're about 6 foot long and 3 foot high. So they will saw those off so that it won't take up so much room. They'll scrape the fat off of that and fry it out. They use a regular buck saw to saw the wood off, saw the jar off. With a large whale, they have to take the head up in 2 sections, and the boat steerer goes down with what's called a head needle. It's a long rod with a rope on the end of it, and he runs that through the head there, a hole in the head. He's got a monkey rope on him, and that's try to hold him from falling over, sliding overboard. Boat steerer on the Morgan did slide overboard, and the shark took his leg off. They haul a chain through in order to haul this is the case part of the whale's head that they're taking. They take the blubber off, they roll the whale on the side, and they cut through from one side, part way through. Then they take and roll the whale by pulling the blubber off of him over, and cut through from the other side to separate the head. Meanwhile, they'll take a blanket piece of board as the whale is rolled over. And that section on the left, that is what is his upper jaw. That would be from about 2 inches thick at the end up to about 6 inches up near his body. And it would be about 2 foot wide. It's just this big slab of bone that's in there. A whale does not have teeth in his upper jaw. Just have sockets that the teeth in his lower jaw fit into. They cut through that with those spades, and then they heist the head on board and the case first, and then the junk. And this is the only power that's on a whale ship, that windlass. With a big case such as the 90-barrel whale would have, they can't take it aboard, so they hang it over the side. They cut it open and bail it out without bringing it all the way aboard the ship, because it's too large. This is the lower section of the whale, or this is the middle section, just above the white horse. That's the junk that has to be brought on separate. The whole of this head would weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 tons. And none of the ships out there were that big to be able to take them aboard, because they were simply lifted out of the water, these heads were. And this shows like an ice cream sandwich. The white part is almost pure spermaceti, and they cut that up into smaller pieces and try it out in the try-works, the same as they do the blubber. With this large case, they have a bucket, that's a case bucket, that they push down with case poles in the background. That bucket is about 18 inches deep. And when they have all the oil out of the case that they can take with that bucket, then they lower a man down head first with a small bucket and a scoop, and he scoops the rest out. That oil, when they first get it, or first open the case, it looks something like olive oil. But the minute it hits the air, it congeals, like the grease on top of water. They keep bailing this out and bailing it out, and then they take this here, after they get the body tried out, they heat it in the try-works to keep it from congealing before they put it into the casks. And they didn't know, but they were homogenizing this whale oil to keep it in liquid form. After the oil has been out, they just cut the case away and let it go, because there's not too much oil left in there. This lump of ambergris weighed 150 pounds and sold for $30,000. That is used to fix the scent in perfume, expensive perfume. They also took a medium-sized whale out there that only weighed about 40 foot long. And this is about the largest that a vessel the size of the Viola or schooner would like to take. And they process it exactly the same way. And the men had the same trouble on the cutting in stage, only when they had a large weight on there, sometimes they would go down even deeper into the water. They're separating the head from the rest of the body. This case they have just inside of the waist, and they slit that up, and the men bail the oil right out. It's when they have a case like this on deck that lots of times the men will take a cup and have a drink of it. It's still warm in the whale's head. That man on the right in the background, he is scraping the spermaceti out. The air has hit it and it's congealed, and he has to actually scrape it out. And in order to get it all, he will actually get inside of that. He's getting inside of the case now, and he'll crawl up to the end. And once this case is bailed out, they simply let it slide overboard, because the amount of oil that they would get out of that wouldn't be worthwhile taking. Of course, after they get through with this, the men have been into the oil, they have to wash up. And there's plenty of water out there. They've got the seawater, though most ships had enough fresh water so the men could wash, especially on these voyages where they plumbed up voyages like this one was. And they would cut the teeth out of the whale, and that man is using a spade to cut the gum. And they pull these teeth out with a block and tackle. It's a hard job pulling these teeth out. Everything about whaling is hard. Those teeth will be taken and put into a cask of water. The water will be changed occasionally to let the gum rot so that they can get at the teeth. Then, of course, they have to be smoothed, and then they make various objects out of them. In order to pull the teeth, they use a block and tackle. And it takes the strength of 2 or 3 men to pull those out. Then, of course, aboard of a whale ship, they clean them up. Contrary to most people's opinion, whale ships were clean. In fact, most of them washed the deck twice a day, and that meant washing the bulwarks and the deck at 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's only a few of the later ships that the captains didn't keep after the men and make them keep the vessel clean. One of the reasons for that was to, if you keep them busy, they couldn't get into trouble. And the men washed their own clothes, and they usually made the washboards themselves out of a piece of hard pine. They had some soap aboard ship that they could use salt water with, but it was so strong, if it didn't look out, it would take the buttons off. And of course, they did all their own sewing. Usually captains let them have Sunday to do this kind of work, and they would put patches on top of patches and then down the last patch. And they washed the overhauls so much that they would be white. And of course, every ship had a barber. Sometimes it was a cooper, sometimes it was another man, another one of the crew. And it's quite a stunt to shave a man with his on board of a ship that's rolling. And in spite of the fact that it might seem dangerous, very few ears or noses were lopped off there. And of course the crew would help the cook, because if you keep on the good side of the cook, well, your food is usually better, or you get larger proportion anyway. And you saw all kinds of floating things out there. In this case here was a can boy that had probably broken away from one of the harbors in New Bedford. And we also saw a derelict raft out there, which was a target raft used by the Navy. These pictures were taken during the First World War. And as the voyage begins to come to a close, the Viola returned to New Bedford in August 23rd of 1916, and 12 days later, she sailed again under Captain Joe Lewis. And she was lost with everybody aboard on the 5th or 6th of September of that year in a hurricane that came up the coast. It's the same hurricane that the Alice Knowles was wrecked in.
Well, gee, Mr. Haley, that's quite an experience. That film is really something to see. Boy, kind of gives you shivers up and down your spine when you watch that thing go, because chasing those things and that sleigh ride and everything else, man, that's, as I've said before, I'm glad I'm a librarian. Now, before we leave for the evening, I would like to make mention of a couple of things in New Bedford. Perhaps you haven't been down, perhaps you've wondered something about the Free Public Library. Well, we have in front of the library in New Bedford perhaps one of the most famous landmarks in this country. It is known as the Whaleman Statue. And this Whaleman statue was given to the city, about 1915, and the words inscribed on the back of the statue are equally as famous as the statue itself: a dead whale or a stove boat. Standing behind this statue is the Free Public Library in the city of New Bedford. This library was built back in 1838. Is that right, Mr.
Yes,
Haggerty?
I think that's...
And it was strange circumstances. It was built with the last surplus that was ever given by the government to the cities and towns of the various states. This is some years back, and the city put, or the town actually put $12,000 with it, and with the $60,000, they built what was then the town hall. And downstairs in what is now the library, at that time, they used to have a little food fair with market, this type of thing. In fact, if you recall the gentleman we had on a couple weeks ago, Mr. Durant, the sailmaker, Mr. Durant met his wife there some years back. But in the library itself, upstairs on the top floor, if you do come to New Bedford to see us, is the Melville Whaling Room. This is the room as it stands right now. It was opened, it'll be 2 years now in April. And in that room we have something approaching 37,000 items of materials on whaling. And we think it's the second largest collection in the country, second only to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. Perhaps it's also the largest in scope, because we had everything from, well, literally soup to nuts. And our chief claim to fame, of course, is Mr. Haggerty here, who is our whaling expert. And we're very pleased with him. He has also written 2 or 3 books that are considered important studies in the field, and he is there to answer any questions that you might have. Well, I guess that's about, again, Mr. Haggerty, all we have time for this evening. That film will really stand out in my mind, especially that Nantucket sleigh ride.
Yes, that is quite something, that Nantucket sleigh ride. When you see the boats bouncing, a whaleboat will actually bounce from one wave to the other. And they won't break, and they've survived many a ride like that.
Well, they may not break, but I'm certain, I think my courage would. Thank you, and good night.
This has been another in our series of telecasts titled Whaling Days. The business of whaling had a great cultural influence on the ports that it touched, especially, of course, New Bedford. And next week, Jim Healy and Reginald Haggerty will explore this cultural aspect on Whaling Days.
Blow ye winds in the morning and blow ye winds hi-ho. All the way you're running gear and blow, boys, blow. And now that he is ours, my boys, we'll tow him alongside. They're over with the blubber hooks and rob him of his hide, singing, blow ye winds in the morning and blow ye winds hi-ho. All the way you're running gear and blow, boys, blow. And now we're back in port, my boys, and through with all the sailing. Let's open up a jug of rum and the hell with blubber whaling, singing, blow ye winds in the morning and blow ye winds hi-ho. All the way you're running gear and blow, boys, blow.
What's going on, guys? Will the Yankee Sailor. Just want to take a quick second and say, hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you did indeed enjoy it, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing as well. Share it if you're so inclined. It really does help us out quite a bit. Welcome aboard. I really do appreciate you joining our crew, and there is a lot more to come, so stand by. All right, thanks for checking out the channel. Thanks for liking, subscribing, all of that, and I'll see you on the next videos. Cheers, guys.